It perhaps has been a busy week for all of us, so right now I invite you to put that busyness aside. Get very comfortable in your seat. Take a deep breath or two. Close your eyes. Shut out any distractions. And let's spend these next few moments knowing the truth together. There is one life, one love, one law, one creative intelligence, operating as the universe and expressing as everything and everyone in it. Creation and evolution are the products of the mind of God, forever manifesting new wonders for the delight of spirit. I am an important part of that creation and evolution. I am expressing the joy of spirit right now, as I am presented with unique opportunities for building a life of discovery and blessing. As I breathe in this beautiful day, I know that the peace and harmony of spirit are present here and everywhere. Grateful for this thing called life, I know that I can fully rely on the goodness inherent in every place, every time, and every situation, because divine mind, ultimate good, is all-knowing, everywhere present, all-powerful, and it is always offering me the highest and best. Therefore, today is my opportunity to look beyond all appearances to the truth that I know is present. Greater by far is that within me than that which is of the world. So I claim a deep blessing for all. I know that peace and love are available to all. I claim for all the knowledge that we are never alone, that spirit is with all people, as all people, all the time. And I know that as the human family lifts one another in love right here and right now, everyone is uniquely and wonderfully blessed. This is the day that the Lord has made, and this is the time when divine love flows. In gratitude, I release this word into the law of mind, which has received it and is acting upon it. It is complete. It is done. And so it is. If you were to spend some time browsing through psychology textbooks or journals, you'd see that for every 100 articles on anxiety, depression, and other disorders, you'd only find one or two on happiness. The science of psychology has always been about what's wrong with us. And it's a little bit like medical science in general. Most of the emphasis has traditionally been placed on fixing what's wrong with our bodies, and very little attention was paid to what is right with our bodies. Of course, this has started to change in recent years. There have been more and more emphasis on how to keep healthy in the first place, as opposed to waiting until you have a problem. We now know more about how to be healthy than at any time in history. And this information is widely available thanks to the internet, television, and other forms of mass media. A lot of this information is contradictory, and a lot of ideas about wellness are in an ongoing state of revision. But the bottom line is this: any one of us likely knows more about the principles of good health than any medical doctor who lived 200 or 300 years ago. And a similar thing holds true for religion. It has historically been about sin and suffering, and systems and practices were developed that claim to help lift you out of your miserable, rotten existence. The assumption has been that you're spiritually defective, but the right church, the right practices, the right offerings, or the right priest will fix you. And the trick here, of course, is figuring out which church is the right church. There's an old gospel song about trying to get to heaven. Its title is "Tell Mother I'll Be There If the Church of Christ is Right." But back to psychology. Its emphasis has been on diagnosing and treating people, and it's really become pretty good at that. But what if instead of putting our focus on fixing what's wrong with people, we could shed some light on how to keep them from going off the rails in the first place? Well, in the past few decades, a new movement has sprung up that does just that. It's called positive psychology. And it says that by learning what makes us happy, fulfilled, and positive, we can prevent a lot of pain and misery in the world. One of the founders of positive psychology is Dr. Martin Seligman, who has spent years doing research into what makes us feel worthwhile, joyful, and productive. And it turns out that most of the things that the world equates with happiness have very little to do with happiness. For example, money. In recent decades, the purchasing power among citizens of first world countries has doubled, and yet this has had almost no impact on overall life satisfaction. During the 1930s, the depths of the Great Depression, studies show that the number of people claiming they were happy was about 32%. And today, the percentage is about the same, even though we're living lives of comfort that ancient royalty could only dream about. While it's true that the very poor tend to be less happy than average, once we get beyond a certain level of financial security, extra wealth does very little to increase our satisfaction. Well, what about marriage? Studies show that 40% of married people claim to be very happy. I wonder if their spouses were listening when people gave their responses. Well, by contrast, only about 24% of single, divorced, or widowed people claim to be very happy. Rich or poor, most people who are happy are in a romantic relationship. Sociability plays its role as well. Nearly all those describing themselves as very happy lead a rich and fulfilling social life. People who spend a lot of time alone generally report a much lower level of happiness. Well, what about gender? Women experience twice as much depression as men and tend to have more negative emotions. However, Women also experience more positive emotions than men. Now, women are both sadder and happier than men, and this is probably because society has traditionally discouraged men from expressing their emotions. What about illness? Turns out this doesn't really affect our life satisfaction as much as we might think. Only severe or multiple illnesses actually lower people's levels of positive thinking and feeling. Well, what about climate? That has no effect on happiness levels. Dr. Seligman says people suffering through a Nebraska winter believe people in California are happier, but they're wrong. We adapt to weather completely and very quickly. Intelligence and educational levels have virtually no effect on happiness and well-being, and neither does race, although some groups, such as African Americans and Hispanics, tend to record lower levels of depression. Religion, however, was found to be one of the biggest factors in well-being and happiness. Religious people are consistently found to be more satisfied with life than the non-religious. They have lower rates of depression and are better able to cope with setbacks and tragedies. So, after all of these research findings, guess what? It turns out that all of the factors that I just mentioned, from money to religion, only account for about 8 to 15% of our overall well-being. Dr. Seligman says that it's something that your grandparents have told you about that is responsible for most of your satisfaction in life. And that thing is good, old-fashioned character. This is something that we build over time, and it includes such qualities as love, courage, moderation, and spirituality. And we achieve those virtues, Dr. Seligman says, by nurturing personal strengths, such as originality, integrity, loyalty, kindness, and fairness. What do all these things have in common? They are all under the umbrella of what the Apostle Paul called the gifts of the Spirit. That is, they're traits that come to us when we're regularly practicing spiritual principles. So it's nice to know that our spiritual practice pays off in the here and now. But there are other theories that come from positive psychology, and one of them is the concept of flow. Now, this was developed by Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and if you've ever felt completely absorbed in something so that you're just lost in whatever it is that you're interested in, you might have been experiencing a mental state that psychologists call flow. And achieving this state can help you feel greater enjoyment, energy, and involvement. Imagine, just for a moment, that you're running a race. Your attention is focused on the movements of your body, the power of your muscles, the force of your lungs, and the feel of the street beneath your feet. You're living in the moment, utterly absorbed in your present activity. Time seems to fall away. You're tired, but you barely notice. This is an example of a flow state. And the idea is similar to the experience of being in the zone, or we might call it being in the groove. This concept is very Zen. There are several factors that accompany the experience of flow, and it's not necessary to experience all of them for flow to occur. Perhaps the most important factor is clear goals, goals that, while challenging, are still attainable. Not too easy, because that's boring, not too tough, because that's discouraging, right down the middle. Goals that are challenging but not out of reach. If we have to stretch a little, we've set an appropriate goal. Flow might also involve strong concentration and focused attention. And we can learn to do this, to sharpen our focus, through regular meditation and visualization processes, learning to quiet that monkey mind that flits from thing to thing to thing and listens to cell phone calls while it's doing it. Another factor in achieving the state of flow is that the activity is rewarding in and of itself. In other words, no longer concerned with the result. It's just intrinsically something we enjoy. So, for example, do you enjoy golf? Win or lose? If so, then that's a good activity for you. Flow produces feelings of serenity and a loss of the feelings of self-consciousness. When we experience flow, we are relaxed. We have a sense of well-being, and we feel connected with all that is. Flow also, as I mentioned a minute ago, involves the concept or the feeling of timelessness, feeling so focused on the present moment that you lose track of time passing. Time, after all, is something that we humans invented for our convenience. There is no time in spirit. And flow involves immediate feedback, which means that we're living in the now, and feelings of personal control, control over the situation and the outcome. When we're doing what we love, we gain proficiency over time, and this gives us a sense of achievement and power. Flow may involve a lack of awareness of physical needs. You're having a mental and spiritual experience. You forget that you're tired, or too hot, or too cold, or too hungry. A number of years ago, I did some shows with Maureen McGovern, who you may remember as the Grammy Award-winning songstress of the song The Morning After from the Poseidon Adventure. And I was at her condo visiting, and while we were chatting away in late afternoon, an alarm went off. And I said, "What is that?" And she says, "Oh, I get so involved with my projects every day that I forget to have dinner. That alarm is to remind me to do so." So it's important to know that flow is a dynamic and ever-changing state. And as your skill levels increase, your ability to go into flow, you'll need to continue to adjust the level of challenge that's needed to help initiate a state of flow. The experience of flow really is an experience of joy. Whatever it is that intrigues you, challenges you, gives you something to get out of bed for each morning, if you don't have that in your life, it's never too late to go for it. Now, if these ideas intrigue you and you'd like to learn more, check out the book Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience by Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And you might find that it's a flow experience just to learn how to pronounce the man's name. Well, we're in the state of flow when we're most fulfilled. And why should that be? It's because we're busy doing what we are. We're busy doing what we are. We're not just sitting around thinking about things. We're not just doing things to stay busy. We're absorbed in something that we find meaningful, and we're growing as we do so. Not a bad recipe for a good life. Do something meaningful, and do it better today than you did it yesterday. Now, you may have noticed that positive psychology's ideas seem familiar. And in fact, you may have noticed that they're very closely aligned with spiritual principles. The idea of flow is a very old one, and it can be found in the spiritual traditions of the East and the West. Water is often used as a symbol for spirit. We have baptism, we have holy water, and so on. And water is at its very best when it is flowing. It's the nature of water to flow. And it's the nature of spirit to flow. It's the nature of spirit to flow through us. It's the nature of spirit to flow as us. Flow involves circulation, and without circulation, we stagnate and die. Writing in the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes tells us, when the flow of circulation is retarded, stagnation results. It is only as we allow the divine current to flow through us, in and out, that we really express life. To the degree that we're flowing with life, we're living the best life possible. It is the path of least resistance. To paraphrase Emerson, the inlet and outlet of the infinite flow of God are within you. The flow of life is calling you to live from the exhilarating and empowering realization that you are the expression of God flowing forth into the world. Consciously living in the flow of God will change your life forever. Lao Tzu said that anyone who flows as life flows has solved the enigma of existence. It sounds wonderful and uplifting, doesn't it? And it's easy to talk about living in the flow here on a Sunday morning, and it's easy to live in the flow when things are going well. We just sort of cruise along, feeling content with ourselves and the world. And we may even look with a sort of self-congratulatory pity on those poor souls who aren't living in the flow. But what happens when the water gets rough? Well, in such cases, it's especially important to go with the flow. Listen to these thoughts by Lao Tzu. Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. Well, what does that mean? Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. And is that good advice? Well, it would be easy to use that admonition as an excuse to do nothing, to throw up our hands and say, well, that's just the way it is. Nothing I can do about it. But that's not what we're talking about here. No matter how much structure we create in our lives, no matter how many good habits we build, there will always be certain things that we can't control. And if we let them, those things can be a big source of anger, frustration, and stress. And the simple solution is to learn to go with the flow. So let's say, for example, that you've created the perfect, peaceful morning routine. You've structured your mornings so that you do the things that bring you peace, contentment, happiness. And then the toilet overflows in the bathroom, and you spend a stressful morning cleaning up the mess and trying to clear the clog. And this ruins your day because you think about being frustrated for the rest of the day. Not the best way to handle things, is it? And yet, if we're honest, most of us from time to time have problems like this. Things that disrupt our routines, people who don't meet our expectations, life that seems to refuse to go the way we want it to go. Well, in this movement we have a saying, what you resist persists. Meaning that we need to go with the flow. So what is going with the flow? It's about not being rigid. It's rolling with the punches. It's accepting change without getting angry or frustrated. It's dealing positively with whatever life presents, rather than trying to force life to be exactly as we want it to be. And it helps to realize that all conditions are temporary. They are always in a state of flux. Emerson said that every fact is fluid. Every fact is fluid. So if we can keep our reactions fluid when dealing with fluid facts, we're in the flow. Think about this. Water does not do battle with obstacles. It doesn't insist on going over a rock. It doesn't throw a fit and demand that the rock get out of its way. It's more efficient than that. It simply finds another way to get to where it's going. Jesus once told his disciples to resist not evil, which is just another way of saying what you resist persists. And this means that resistance, fighting, getting angry, and etc., are negative responses to real problems. Several weeks ago, I mentioned in a completely different context that one of the first things that circus clowns are taught to do, and this applies to movie stuntmen and acrobats as well, one of the first things they're taught is how to fall. Now, you may say, that's silly. We've been falling since we were little bitty babies. But babies do it the right way. They don't tense up and try to resist the landing. But as adults, we usually tense up, and so when we land, it's one rigid object crashing into another rigid object. But if we relax when taking a fall, we take most of the impact out of landing on a hard surface. Several years ago, I saw Red Skelton perform live, and in his 2-hour show, in his late 70s, he took 2 or 3 falls as part of his routine. He had learned to relax, to go with the flow, and to avoid being injured. When I was a senior in college, I was invited to go on a 3-day canoeing trip down the White River in the Ozark Mountains. It was called the White River because at many points there were rapids that turned the water very choppy, aerating the water and making it look almost solidly white. Now, I'd never been in a canoe in my life, and in fact, I didn't even know how to swim. But as they spoke about the remoteness of the area and its scenic beauty, I thought, well, why not? I'd been under a lot of stress that senior year, final exams, doing student teaching, and a weekly load of 17 private piano students. So maybe, I thought, 3 days in the wilderness would do me good. Well, it was a long day's drive to get to our destination, and it wasn't until we'd been on the road for 2 or 3 hours that the guys started talking about how often our canoes would get capsized by the rapids. This was the first I'd heard about this, but by then it was too late to do anything about it. So we got to where we were going, we rented 3 canoes for the 6 of us, we camped out for the night, and then we started on our journey. It was indeed beautiful and peaceful. We didn't see another human for 3 days. No one capsized that first day, but on the second day, one canoe capsized twice. It was no big deal. The guys in that canoe were experienced and no harm was done. But on the third day, the rapids increased in intensity, and I started getting nervous. And we finally hit an area where the rapids were more like a cascade or a waterfall. And in the quiet of the forest, the sound of crashing water was deafening. And somebody said, guys, this is it. We're all going to flip over. And sure enough, his canoe capsized almost immediately. And the second one went over shortly after that. The canoe I was in tossed up and down, back and forth, spun in circles, leaned this way and that, and then we landed on smooth waters and serenely floated downstream. What had happened? Well, according to the other guys, they had fought the rapids with every fiber of their being, their oars thrashing and pushing back against the power of the currents. Me, I just sat there, terrified. The other guy was shouting at me what to do, but I couldn't really hear him. And as a result, my canoe went with the flow and reached the calm waters safely. At the end of 3 days, my canoe was the only one that didn't capsize. Now, you may be saying that was beginner's luck, and you may be right. I'm not sure because I never went canoeing again. All I know is that I didn't resist what I couldn't control, and everything worked out all right. Life presents us with all kinds of circumstances, and we have choices about how to respond. We can fight, throw a fit, thrash around, moan and complain, or we can choose not to resist and ride out the storm. It's okay to look for opportunities, and I'm not saying that we should do nothing when adversity heads our way. It's just that our first tendency is to tense up and then start flailing around, and that does us very little good. We've got to go with the flow. And sometimes we feel that the winds of fate are against us. Sometimes we feel as though we're not in control of our lives at all. And yet, it may be during those times that we're most fully in control, when we're in fear and doubt. After all, those reactions are a choice, and choice is, perhaps, our greatest power. And although it feels as if our troubles come at us from somewhere out there, if we're honest, we realize that we played some part in attracting those problems. And we know that we played the only role in reacting to them. When the waves of adversity crash against us, we do have a choice what to think, what to feel, what to believe. And if we look around, we'll see other people in similar circumstances, people who take it all in stride. What is it that makes some people so optimistic, even in tough times? Well, it's not the direction of the wind or the height of the waves. The way they flow is the same for everyone in similar circumstances. And it's no good fighting the waves. The waves will not be subdued. And it's no good railing at the wind. The wind will keep blowing. Our job is to remain proactive about our situation and ride out the storm. The sailing metaphor is a good one for telling us about our attitudes. Instead of saying, I can't, ask yourself, how can I? With a change in attitude, you can change your direction. And with a change in direction, you can change your destination. Ella Wheeler Wilcox made this point with her poem titled The Winds of Fate. One ship goes east and another goes west, with the self-same winds that blow. 'Tis the set of the sails and not the gales, which tells us the way to go. Like the winds of the sea are the ways of fate as we voyage along through life. 'Tis the set of the soul that defines the goal and not the calm or the strife. So don't fight about which way the river should flow or how hard the wind may blow. They always go the way they're going to go, just as you will. Calmly acknowledge whatever life presents you, knowing that you absolutely can deal with it. If your life is currently quiet, be good with quiet. If it's rapids, be good with rapids. Being upset about any of this won't matter one bit. In other words, be just as good with turbulence as you are with calm. That's what it is to live the good life. That's what we should mean when we say, just go with the flow. Decide, accept, and believe that no matter what, you are having an awesome day. No matter which way the water is flowing, no matter how hard the wind is blowing, if you keep on rowing as your faith is showing, you'll be knowing that your blessings are growing. And so it is.